Right, so welcome to my video. This is a Zoom class, and because I've injured my thumb, it's the injured thumb, I didn't really want to do a complete painting, because it's actually, you use your thumb an awful lot holding a brush, and you might like the painting, but you really wouldn't like the screaming that goes along with it. And so I thought, well, let's keep it simple and use a delicate touch. So I want to add complexity to the sky. When I finished it, and when I see it in the viewfinder on the camera, to my eye, and before I go on, I just want to check there aren't any reflections on the picture. Good. I find that the dividing line between the red and the blue, in other words, everything below this handle here, it's like a red band. You've got a few bits of red sort of patching around in the sky. That's a new one, patching, dotted around in the sky. I'll probably add a few more, but I want to sort of introduce the red further up in quite small brush strokes. So I'll use this, and I might even use a real artist's brush and actually use one of these from time to time, just for small touches. One thing that you can't see is that I painted this and it's completely dry. It's been around for a while, absolutely bone dry, which is good. But there is some sinking in where the oil has sunk through into the board. You get that whether you put gesso on it or not. So you get sort of blotches all over it. When I finish this and the painting is completely dry again, I'll oil it out. In other words, put oil all over it. That's a very thin coat, and that'll give it an even sheen before I varnish it. So the colours that I'm using at the moment is just Japanese red and titanium white. I'll be probably putting a bit of blue in it a bit later on, but not immediately. So this is just to sort of give you an idea how easy it is to change a painting. So basically I've mixed pink. Before I get going, I'm just going to check that there aren't any bristles on there that need to come off. There may be one there, or it could just be a lump in the paint, I think. But anyway, so I'm going to start to just break up the hard line between the red and the rest of the sky. Very, very pale pink. It probably looks like white. In fact, it's a little bit too on the white side. So I'm going to just punch it up a bit. I'm using a very small amount of oil. It's not just linseed oil. It's linseed oil with a drying agent built in. So you don't have to sort of get a lump of paint and carefully drip on bits of drying agent. And it really is good stuff. I could recommend it to you, but I don't know, maybe you could get it over in the States, I'm not sure, but I'll show you the bottle at the end. So what I was saying about when I showed you that sky on the chat before we started, which I'll just put up on the screen here. Okay, so when you paint a sky that's got quite bright colours in it, in fact, even if it doesn't have bright colours, get as many facets into the texture as you can. The more little tiny details that you put in, they're not really details when you think about it. They're actually just sort of just a touch with a brush. That's all, just like that. Which I'm hoping you can see that there. Let me just put my hand on it and then go and look in my viewfinder. Yeah, it's looking okay. I think it'll probably come out. If it doesn't come out on the Zoom video, it'll come out on the video that I'll upload tomorrow. So all I'm doing is literally feathering the brush over the sky. And it's one of these things where you just sort of have fun, just sort of let the brush wander where you think is the logical place to put it. And the more you do things like this, in fact, I can recommend this. Get a painting, just to paint anything, just paint a really rough sky and let it go completely dry, and then do what I'm doing now and just sort of have fun. It's the same old thing. If it goes wrong, you just wipe it off and you've got the original painting again, and you can start from scratch. So you sort of make yourself a practice board. But, you know, sometimes I'm pressing, sometimes I'm being really light-handed with it. Just whatever you feel is right. And the other thing is, well, it depends on you, you see. Some people will just sort of paint like that. Now, that will produce a very predictable mark. There's actually paint on the brush, but I can do that gentle enough so that nothing comes off. Okay? That takes a bit of practice too. But what I tend to do is work in little circles. So I'm sort of doing that. That's it on a big scale. And then you just sort of spiral down and you're just literally just touching it like that. So, and I'll be putting, as I said, I'll be putting some blue on. I might make it slightly bluer at the top. So, step back again, have a look. Some of these colours, we were talking about purple earlier, that looks sort of purpley there, but don't know, maybe you're not on the video. But it doesn't matter, it's quite nice. It sort of goes anyway, because red and blue make purple. So off you go, just sort of keep doing it. And when you find a cloud like this, there's one right up in the corner here, just add a little bit of red underneath it, and that will give the feeling that the light is actually coming bouncing on the cloud. What else should we do? Let's just carry on for a bit. Try not to make too many islands. Same thing. It's the same thing on most paintings. It relates to the landscape as well. No separate islands. Have a flow through the picture. You know, you've got a dark area here with these clouds. You've got a dark area here with these trees, but don't sort of isolate them. Let them connect. It's quite surprising when you go out and look at something like this, which is sort of like farmland. As things get further in the distance, generally, all the bands that you put get closer together, and unless you look at it carefully, you may not even see the break in all the different woods and hedges. Now then, let's just increase it a little bit more up there. I'll be adding some white spots in a moment. And I'm looking around the room as I paint, looking for the next picture that I can work on. And in fact, I'll just hold it up. If it doesn't look good held up, I'll edit it out. And I'll drop it in as a photo on the video. But this is another one that I did, which is sort of similar. And I was going to do the same sort of thing, but that might get a bit tedious. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to work on the sun as well. So just a slightly stronger lump of red there. And because I'm working on a dry painting, this is, I suppose, actually glazing, because there's no lumps of paint on there. It's just a stain. So do I want any more up there? I think we'll have a hint up there in that dark area. Okay, that's a slightly more gentle transition. A little touch there, and then I'm going to go over it with some paper. Won't need a lot for this because, as I said, the amount of paint that I'm putting on is incredibly thin. In fact, it's so thin, and with the medium that I use, it might even be dry in about 2 days. Okay, so all I'm doing is muting these down a bit more. There we go. It's as easy as that. And in fact, it still wants a little bit more. Now I could add a bit more punch to this, I suppose. It's tricky though. What does one do? Does one add a load of punch to it, or keep it as close to the original as possible? Bearing in mind I've already sold the picture, so I don't know. Don't want to change it too much. Hopefully it will improve it. It usually does. One day that day may come when I completely ruin a painting. Right, it needs a few more, as I said, facets. It's a funny word, facets. Facets, a few more facets in there, and there'll be some white facets as well. Of course, now I've discovered a word that I don't use much. I'm going to be faceting all over the place. Okay, so let's just, without cleaning the brush, let's just add a little bit of white to the tip. Literally just touching the tip of the brush, which you may be able, it's probably out of focus, but I've just added a few little flecks of white to the tip. And I'll do the same sort of thing that I was doing, and adding a few, oops. Now I'm not bleeding there, that's just red paint. So literally just a few tiny fluffy little spots. It's quite incredible, you don't realise how much you use your thumb. Okay, a few little, you see now, here's a thought. A cloud doesn't have to be like, you know, a big, sort of big, bold cloud. Even if it is, it must have a multifaceted edge. A cloud can also be just that, because it's part of the greater thing. And believe me, when you get plenty of these things going on in a painting, don't go over the top, obviously, don't go sort of completely berserk doing it, but just get a few in there so that it you know, makes the painting twinkle a bit. So let the brush make mistakes and just use them. The thing about making mistakes, you know, this is the whole point of the illusion of detail, is that you let the brush go. All you're doing is just holding it, right? So, and moving it a little bit. Think of it that way. It's just moving a brush around. And the tip of the brush, as you move more pressure onto the surface or take pressure off, gets interesting. It just sort of accidentally leaves marks, which start to sort of build up, and people will look at it and say, how do I paint such an intricate sky? Well, this is how you do it. It's no big secret. I think a lot of tutorials might go into, you know, doing something like this and just sort of say, now, you know, when you work on the sky, just do this. That, you know, they may come out with some, how do I put this, some kind of rigid way of painting a sky, whereas all you need to do is, as I always say, relax. Relax. Occasionally, when you're sort of working across a sky, just add a sort of flick into it every now and then. Just sort of flick your wrist a bit. Just see what happens, and you'll be surprised. It adds to the picture. I think we'll have a few more white ones down there. So literally just dabbing just the tip of the brush. So let's have, so we've got the sun or the moon. I still haven't really decided. I guess it's I guess it's the sun. Although I'd prefer it to be the moon, because you know, painting the sun, even when it's muted by layers of particles in the atmosphere, I don't know. I just think it's slightly naff. I might be the only one that thinks that, but that's the way I tend to see it. Because the sun is so bright and powerful. To try and paint a bright sun in a semi-real, well, it's a sort of realistic-ish, but a toneless painting, you cannot get that brightness. So that's why I tend to hide the sun behind a cloud and use the light that's poking out the edges. So that then people can, in their mind's eye, they can picture the power of the sun. That's the idea. Now, if I want to put a bit of a glow on that, it's at the right stage now, you see, because it's dry. I can brighten it up a little bit. And that's just with a little bit of paint on the finger. So if I put that on there and make a circular motion, like so. Okay, that's the first stage. The more I do that, the more I think it's a moon. But in fact, I'll tell you what I'm tempted to do is make it slightly more pink. It'll be more convincing with a bit of red in it. Now this is the only difficult bit of the painting. The rest of it is a piece of cake. And the difficult thing is keeping the roundness. So I'm just going to add a little bit of pink to that. Okay, that is pinker. You may not see it. It'll show on the final painting. The other thing I'm going to do is going to have to use a different finger. I usually use my thumb for this. Let's try the index. That feels weird. I'm going to use my index. I'm going to get paint all over my bandage, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll change the bandage later. What I want to do is just level off the bottom edge a bit. Like so. Does that even work? It's getting there. And just a little bit more. Let's try it another way. Right, so I'm going to add a bit of red. A little bit on the tip of that, and I'm going to put that on the sky below it and bring it up over the offending star or planet. I think I might get away with that. Okay, and I may even leave that to completely dry again and then put the glow. I can show you how the glow would be put. Imagine I've just well, no, I'm going to do it. I'll do it anyway. So what I'm going to do is blur it now. Make it bigger. Turned into a fair-sized golf ball now. Do I even like it? Yeah, it's sort of growing on me. To blur the edge of the white, you have to keep working on it. Around the edge, so there we are. So it gets smudged. Okay, let's lock the camera there. Okay, so now that we're zoomed in, I can see that little bit of red on the bottom right corner needs to be taken away. That's not so bad. Good. Okay, and then a slightly harder line of red underneath it. So I'll keep using my finger because it's actually quite handy. Handy. No pun intended. Okay, and then the bottom edge, let's just sort of do that. Another look in the camera. Yeah. So basically what I've got is a softer edge. Rather than a round crisp edge, a hard crisp edge, it's softer. And in fact, I will leave it there at that stage like that, because if I want more of a glow added to it, I'll let it dry and then just put white all around it to sort of increase it a bit. So for now, that's all I'll do on that. So now, the other thing I was going to do then is add a tree. So let's see whether we can do that. Let's find a tree-sized brush. That looks like a good tree brush to me. And as usual, sap green and red ochre with a bit of Payne's grey. Now you may not need to add Payne's grey when you make a dark green. If the sap green is dark enough, you don't need. The brand that I use, which I don't get paid for saying this, it's Le Franc-Bourgeois red ochre and sap green, and it just the only reason I use the paints is because the sap green is the type that I like. It's got a nice. Well, it's dark, basically, simple as that. The overall shape of this tree is basically a bit like a tree you'd get in Africa. It looks like a hawthorn sort of shape too, which you do get a lot in France. They're everywhere. Okay, so let's just recall the tree. It's going to be in its simplest form. And I've just got to think to myself, how big will I make it? Now, I could put it here so the sun is poking through behind, because that's quite a weak tree. I actually like what's going on over here, although I will add some light green in a few moments, in a few patches, because the light would still be catching the ground, even when it's, you know, the sun that low. So let me just think out loud for a moment. Let me see what we can do. I could make the shape there. It's going to be almost silhouette because it's, you know, with the sun behind it like that, it would be. Keep a little bit of red poking through there, saves you having to add it later. And then just think tree shapes. I'll add the trunk in a moment, because there is a trunk there, but that's the X tree. This is the new tree. There we are. And the brush will make the fragmented leaf patterns. Can you see it? I'll go in a little bit closer. Okay. So when you paint something like this sort of shape of tree, leave a gap here, okay, and that is for putting tree trunks over. Now, because it's that specific type of shape, they won't go to the ground, they'll come back to the main central trunk. Let's just have a little bit of twiggery poking up there. Because you're not painting every branch, you see, you're just trying to get the essence of the tree across. Okay, and while I'm in that area, I'm just going to sort of meld this colour. You may not see it, again, because of the quality of zoom, but this colour that I've added needs to match these other colours quite closely. Doesn't have to be exact, but just some of that colour interspersed across the rest of the painting is you're adding a thing called local colour. You don't want, unless it's really obvious, you know, you might have a tree that's, I don't know what it is, but you get them over here quite a lot, and it's like a tall, whippy, oversized bush, which is bright yellow. I have to figure out what it's called. But if you had something like that in there, people would know that it's a totally different species, but these are basically all the same. So let's just add some local colour. Might even add a little bit to this one here. Just a touch, nothing too obvious. Okay, so that comes down there. These bits of... There's a very faint hint of a tree trunk, which is pretty well lost, so I won't worry about it. I think that I'll lose it completely in a moment. It's funny, when you paint a picture, you see, I painted this quite a while ago, and you go back to it, you see all the things that need to be changed, that seem obvious now, but at the time when you paint it, it's not always that obvious. It's one of the tricks, I think, of producing a reasonably professional-looking painting is to try and spot everything early on. Although that's actually looking quite nice. Good. Okay, so is there anything in there that disturbs my eyeballs? Let's have just that up there, just a touch. Okay. Now, to get the some of the character of the tree, I need a scrawny little rigger brush. I think I've shown you this before. This is a very useful bit of equipment. It's a flower holder. I don't think it's antique, but it's I got it in an antique shop in France. But basically, you can stick a brush in it and just sort of literally throw them in the holes. And because of the way it's made, none of the tips can touch. So if you've got a whole load of wet paint on brushes, you use one of those holders rather than something like a pot that just puts everything upright. And you'll keep your brushes well organised. Let's get into there a bit. Okay, so there's no real mystery about painting tree trunks like this. It's because what you're after, and never forget this, it's always worth drumming this into your brain. Okay, so there's my rigger, right? Scrawny little thing. Probably the most expensive brushes that I use are the riggers. Okay, brand new one. And all you do, you don't have to mix up a separate colour for the tree trunk, because over this distance and in those lighting conditions, it would appear, except for maybe a highlight or two, it would generally appear to be the same colour as the foliage. It's almost like a cut-out silhouette type thing. So all I'm going to do is just a few lines heading back to the centre of the tree. There's not much point there because it's all basically covered. But I suppose I could put a line there like so. How does that look in the camera? Well, it's a hint. And then off we go. So it's just, and don't do straight lines, let them wiggle about a bit. So that's coming down there, there's another one there. Another one here, small and thin as you can get them if you want. If you want a little bit of detail in there, let's have another hint of a line there, like so. There we are. Now, the tree trunk that is now redundant down here, all you've got to do is just put a little touch of colour on the highlights every now and then, and it'll disappear almost completely. And a smudge. That's probably enough. Okay, so light green across the landscape. Let's try that. I'm not going to do much. Again, it's going to be a bit like a glaze. It's called a light green. And I don't know whether it makes any difference if I put it in front of the camera. This will eventually focus. There we go. Before it goes on the painting. Okay, now I'm not going to use the palette knife to apply it. I was just doing that to show you what the colour looks like before I put it on the picture. So I could add this with a big brush. Shall I do it with a big brush or a small brush? Rhetorical. Okay, let's use a big brush, because really it is, as I said, it's at the glazing stage. So it's one of these, it's a translucent colour. Some colours are translucent, some are quite opaque. This one's translucent. You can apply it and not add any medium at all, and it will still act as a glaze. Don't need much on the brush. Again, it's more like a stain. And all I want really is just every now and then, just a little bit of, and I'm deliberately going over the dark bits here. A little bit there. All these blobs here will make sense in a moment. And then let's have some light coming across there. Literally just scrub it on. In fact, that stuff under there, I could probably mute that down a bit. That puts the tree further away. Let's have a stronger blast of light just there. I hope I'm keeping out of the way enough here, because I've worked on keeping out of the way for years. I knew I'd get the hang of it one day. Let's move that way a bit, put it more in the middle of the picture. There we go. Oops, there. Okay. Right, so when it's finally finished, and I've got even more of a white sort of halo around that moon or sun, it's quite good. You see, I'm taking people probably to that part of the painting first. The idea is that people will read the painting a bit like they read text. In other words, they'll come in from the left, go to the brightest spot in the painting, and then they'll be entranced, I hope, by the sky, and they'll look at the sky and follow it along and then go back again. That's the theory. Usually works. But to sort of add to this, I'm going to put even more light down on the ground here, just to make sure. So that there, I think we'll go slightly behind this bush and reappear there. You see, no delicate little expensive brush, just a device for moving paint from one part of your studio to another. I suppose that's one way of thinking about it. It's paint transport. Okay, there's a nice belt of light there, and I think logically it would appear here, so that's just literally a lump of paint almost, hidden by this bush. I might reform the bush in a moment, actually, because I'm not quite as happy as I could be there. Okay, so another bit of light hitting that slope over there. Okay, so I'll work on this a bit more in a minute, but this is just getting the paint down, although it looks quite good. Now the bottom right corner has got a sort of slightly paler sandy bare soil clay type look, which I actually quite like. I think that works. So we'll keep this brighter green. Let's put it up a few dots between the tree trunks there. Have we seen that? Yep, good. And then maybe a hint there. This is the playing stage now. So you know that if you've got this far in the painting, it'd be quite tricky to ruin it. And I try every now and then, but it doesn't work. Okay, let's just move across the picture a bit. Okay, where else would there be light? Let's say we got. You come in here, you've got light on the ground. Dark behind the tree, that's okay, that works all right. Maybe a little bit more light just there, just a hint, and a hint there. Okay, that's all right. The distant hill there, to you, that's probably going to look like a very small bump on the landscape. So let's get you closer. Okay, would there be a hint of green on that hill? Not necessarily, but it might work. So I'll just do it, and it's literally just a touch. Like that, like so. Okay, moving across here. Right, let's have a little bit more light just there. Over here, this is if you were, okay, let me explain it this way. If you were designing a magazine spread, this area is the important bit. That's where people look. If you have a boring picture in a magazine, and believe me, I've designed many magazines, the most boring, quiet picture, not necessarily boring, but the calmest picture would be down here. Interesting, not so interesting, quite interesting, fairly interesting. Okay? So it's the same in a painting. That's why attention tends to be over on the right-hand side, I think. And it works, so experiment with it. The reason I've zoomed in here is to show you where I put these blobs here. Now, there are some tree shapes underneath, so what I want to do, if I can do this again without screaming, because my thumb throbs at the moment, is to take away the green that I put on the trees and just leave the bits in between. So this tree now has become slightly more defined. The top edge of this one is a bit sort of dull, so I'll just take off some of the green, like so. Same there. Just pull it back, like so. A few hard lines every now and then aren't a bad thing. Okay, so it's easier to do that than it is to sort of paint in the green, you know, all fiddly between these trees. What else are we going to do here? I don't need to use, or do I? I don't think I do. I'm just thinking out loud. Do I need a big brush to soften these clouds that I put on? Probably not. I don't think I do. And it would take a lot of work because the paint is quite dry. So you can just do it with a piece of paper. You can just sort of scumble them a little bit like that, and they'll sort of mute back down into the picture, because you don't want them to look like an afterthought. You know, everything needs to be keyed in together.
Stuart, can you zoom back a little bit?
Oh yeah. I have to say, Richard, you're worth the money.
I'm going to try and save that and let my wife hear that.
Now, the question is, do I leave that in the final video? Maybe I will, actually. Okay, right, we're back to focusing. Right, so, yes. I'll backtrack so I can stitch this back in. Okay, so now I don't think I need to use the big brush to mute down the white highlights that I put in the sky. You can use paper and just sort of scumble them gently. There's hardly any oil in the paint. It's quite dry, so it scumbles well. Scumbling wet paint doesn't work. It's really something you don't want to do. So if you're going to do something like this, that's why when I paint a sky, I put the white on with no oil added, so that when I beat it with a big brush, it doesn't sort of splurge all over the place. Splurge? No, that's the wrong word, and I think that's an Americanism. We don't use splurge. Well, we didn't used to use splurge in the UK, but the word I want is spread. Simple as that, really. You don't spread the paint everywhere because it's quite tight to the canvas or board. It's well attached. I think that actually might be it, you know. I might add a little bit of blue. Let's see what that does. So we've got this sort of slightly darker, I'm just going to get in the way so I can look at it, slightly darker effect up there, but up on the top right, now looking in my camera I can see that the blue does actually look quite light and fresh. It ain't quite that light, so I'm just going to sort of put that on just to get some of the texture lines out of the paint. Now what I could do, I could leave this again, as I said earlier, to dry, and then, which I will do, and then I could oil it out to get rid of any blotches on there. Most paintings probably need oiling out. I'm just going to add a little bit there. Most paintings need oiling out because regardless of whether you're on canvas or board like this, and this has 3 coats of gesso, you will get sinkage, or sinking in as it's called. It's almost impossible to avoid. So if you're going to produce a painting that's professional and saleable, then you do need to oil out. It evens everything out. Now, before you varnish, you can oil out and then paint on the oiled out areas, well, which should be everything. So in other words, if I oil this out and then I decide I want to do more work on the clouds, I can do that, particularly if I catch it just before the oiling out process has dried out. Now, if it's completely dried out, that's still okay, but if you work on it while it's still wet, you'll get quite a nice effect. It just adds a certain glow to the picture. There we go. So that's just freshened up those blues just a touch. As I said, I don't think you'll see it much. Yeah. And it looks like there's a hard line between the blue and the sky. That's the camera simplifying it. The actual painting isn't like that. It's actually very soft along there, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I think that's all the blue that I'm going to add, I think. I'll just stand back and have a look at it. Yeah, I think it's generally the whole thing is more comfortable now. You haven't got that sudden sort of stripe of red. When I do oil it out, which will be quite soon, because, you know, as I said, this will dry quite fast now. I don't know, I might even glaze the foreground just to tone that down just a little bit more. I don't know. I'll know in the next day or so after I've looked at it for a bit. And yeah, I think that's probably as far as we'll go. So there we are. Thanks for being here. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now. Oh, and before I go, if you want to be a patron, if you go to my Patreon page, that's below, and you become a patron, it doesn't matter how much you donate, you all stand a chance of getting a free painting. Not this one, however. This one's spoken for. But I think the next one I'm going to be giving away is the one I'm putting on the screen now. So as I said a moment ago, hope you enjoyed it, hope you learnt something. Bye for now.